Hey guys, welcome. This is Miss Mendoza. Today we are going to learn how to find the discrete domain and range. So we talked a little bit about domain and range last time. So I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to go to 100. And I'm going to, we're going to remember what domain and range is. So last time we talked about domain is the set of all input values or X values. And then range, so I'm going to hit my text box, I'm going to get another one, is the set of all output values or Y values. Okay, so we saw this, we introduced that last time with the nuggetizer video. If you haven't seen it, you can search it on YouTube. And it's under nuggetizer video, or you can access my notes from last time on evaluating functions. All right, so today we're going to talk about a discrete function. So a discrete function, or really a discrete relation, is it's a relation with distinct and separate values. So what does that mean? That means that these values of the functions are not connected with each other. And I'm going to show you a couple of examples that are discrete. So we're going to find the domain and range. And so when we find the domain and range of a discrete relation, we write this by listing it, and we put the little, it's called set notation, but it's these little brackets around the numbers that we list. And so if you're like, where do I find those brackets? If you go on your keyboard, it's next to the P. You would just hit, let me do it. You would just hit here. Shift, and then the one next to the P is the open one, and then shift, and the one next to that one is the closed one. Okay, so that's gonna go around our list of values. All right, so let's look at the first example. So we have 4 different examples of discrete relations. So the first one is an ordered pair, and so we said that our domain is our input or our X value. So if we're looking at ordered pairs, right, it would be the first value in each parentheses, because our X always comes first for our ordered pairs. And so in order for me to type this in correctly, I'm going to type in my bracket, so shift, open bracket, and then I'm just going to list the values. So -1 is my first value, -2 is my second value, 4 is my third value, and 7 is my last value, and I close the bracket. So if you're sitting there and you're wondering where I got these numbers from, it's from here. So let me draw, I'm going to underline. So this is my X, this right there. Okay, let me make it a little bit thicker so you guys can see and change the color. I'm going to do a green, or bright green. Okay, so these are my X values. So control, I'm going to duplicate. So -1, -2, 4, and then 7. Okay, one thing to remember is if you have the same number twice, then in your X place, it's not a function. We learned that already, but also you only write it once for your input. You don't have to write it twice for your when you're writing your discrete domain and range. Okay, all right, so now let's look at the range. So I'm gonna look at my Y. So I'm gonna underline this. I'm gonna change the color to, I think, blue. So the first value I have for Y is 1. So I'm going to open my brackets. Oh, let me get a text box, sorry. Get a text box. I'm going to open my brackets, and I'm going to type in 1. My next one is 2. So let me duplicate this line. Oh, sorry. Let me click on it and then duplicate it. All right, so it's 2. Try one more time. There we go, Control D. All right, so it's 2 underneath it. technology sometimes does not work for me. 2, and then -4, and then -7, and I close my brackets. And if you notice, I got these numbers from here. Okay, so my domain is my input, my x value, my range is my output, and this is what they are. All right, let's look at mapping diagram. So for mapping diagram, remember this left side is your input, which is, or your x values, and this right side are your output or your y values. And so domain is always our input and range is always our output. So same thing, I'm gonna get a text box. I need to make sure I open my bracket. So shift, open bracket, and I'm just gonna list my x values. Now, if you notice, 9 has 2 y values, and so does 8. But I'm not gonna list them twice. I only need to list them once. So 9, -6, 4, and 8. Okay, so now I'm gonna do the same thing for my range. So I'm gonna get a text box. I'm gonna open my brackets. And so 5, -5, 3, 7. Where did I get those numbers from? From my y, my output here. That's my range, is my output. All right, so let's move on to a table. It's the same. I'm looking at my x for domain, and I'm looking at my y for range. So that's what you have to remember. Your x is always your domain, and then your, excuse me, your range is always your y. All right, so domain, 0, -8, 2, 1. Where did I get those numbers? From my x, okay? For domain. Again, range is my y. I'm going to say it a million times so you guys remember. Is my y. So I'm going to look at my output for range. So 9, 3, -6, 4. That is my output. So this is just telling me that my input is 0, -8, 2, -1, and my output is 9, 3, -6, 4. All right, so these are all easy for us to do for domain and range. I'm going to do one more. So discrete graph is different than other types of graphs because in discrete graph, we only have points. We do not have a line connecting it. Okay, whenever you have a line connecting it, that is not going to be a discrete graph. That's going to be a continuous graph, and we're going to talk about that in the next section. And so when you have that, you write it differently than what we're going to write it today. Okay, so right now we have a discrete graph. How do I know it's a discrete graph? Because it has points. Okay, so let's go ahead and type that. The discrete graph only has points. Okay, it does not have lines. It only has points. All right, so that is how I know it's a discrete graph. And then what do? What have we been doing? We have to open up our brackets and then just start typing in our x value. So if you're looking at this and if it's easier for you to first write it out as an ordered pair, then you can do that. But I'm just going to look at this and I'm going to type it in. All right, so I'm going to start from left to right. So whenever we're reading a graph for domain and range, we always start from left to right, okay? So my first domain, if I'm starting on the left, my first x value, this point would be -3, okay? My next x value for the next point is -2. My next x value for this point here is -1. And then I don't have one for 0, do I? No, that's an arrow. So I'm gonna go here. My next x value is 1. And then my last x value is 2. Oops, not F2. Okay, so then I close my bracket. So I'm gonna do the same thing for range. So I'm gonna get another text box. I'm gonna type in my open bracket. If you need to pause me or rewind it, you have that luxury when learning online, so you can do that. but I'm going to keep going. So now I'm going to look at my range. So remember, we said our range was our output or our y value. So for x, we read it from left to right. Actually, let me type it in here. And this is going to help you. If you get in the habit of doing it this way, it's going to help you a lot when we get into, what do you call it? Left to right to continuous. And then for our range, we read it from bottom to top. So I'm just going to duplicate this and then just go from bottom to top. So I always like to imagine like I read from left to right. So that's why domain is left to right. And then we grow from bottom to top, right? So then that's why we read the range from bottom to top. I just use that to remind myself on where I'm going to start. It also helps you put it in order. Okay, so let's move on. All right, so I'm going to type this in now. So my lowest point here is this one. So my y value here is -1, -2, -3. So that's the first number I type. My second value, my second lowest is this one here. So my y value for that is -2. My second lowest value is this one here, or the second, yeah. So that value is -1. And then I move over here and I have this value, which is 1, and I have one more that is at 1, but I don't need to type it in twice, so you just leave it. You just write it once. So that is my domain and range of a discrete graph. Okay, so remember that a discrete graph is when it only has points. All right, so you're gonna go ahead and try these 6 examples down here, and so type them in, and then your teacher will check it, and then you're gonna continue with your practice. All right, I hope this was helpful. You can ask your teacher if you have any questions, ask me if you have any questions, and have a great day.